Dispel.
From the studio gym where excuses never apply,
It's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We're hoping that the internet cooperates today. We have Dr. Shawn Baker joining us in a moment. Returning, he's been on the show. This will be his third time on the show. The first time he was on the show was in July of 2017 when he had started his N equals many website and project. We're going to talk about that. And I think I have some questions for him that may not have been asked before. So we'll keep it interesting. Later in the show, we're going to be joined by Will Harris from White Oak Pastures. They just published a study in conjunction with General Mills that shows that their farming style produces a zero carbon footprint. And this is the model for regenerative farming moving forward. And we can get rid of this nonsense that, raising cows is destroying the planet, because it's a complete lie. And if you don't think it's a lie, well, just look back at all the other lies the government has told you so far and use your brain. Before we get started, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods, makers of the tasty pastry. What was supposed to be an answer to the Pop-Tart has become so much more. 20 grams of high-quality protein, less than 1 gram of sugar, 4 to 5 net carbs if you're a low-carb guy like me. But they taste amazing, and they taste so good your children will want to eat them all, unlike your favorite protein bar, which they will spit out. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to save 10% off today. And now, without further delay, I know we're getting a little late start here today. Let's bring Dr. Baker on. How you doing, Shawn?
Hey, Carl. Thanks a bunch, man. Thanks for having me on here. It's good to see you again.
So the first show we ever did was in 2017 when you won a powerlifting competition at the ripe age of 50, if I'm correct, if my memory serves me. Do you remember that?
I think that was about the first time we did that. I've been doing a bunch of different sports over the years, but yeah, I've been doing that forever now.
So you have become an Instagram sensation because of your willingness to watch vegans talk about lies about the vegan diet while you're eating a steak with what looks like a machete to me. People love that stuff, don't they?
It seems to be gotten a good response. So it's just a lot of fun. Like I said, I do some of that stuff for the entertainment value, and then hopefully that gets people to listen to what I have to say as far as what's going on with nutrition and like you were alluding to the sort of the nonsense about cows boiling the ocean with their cow farts and stuff that they have they're trying to get you to believe that stuff.
Whenever we talk about this topic, I love to put this up, and I'm going to put it up first to kind of set the stage. This is from the USDA's own statistics. That if you're watching live, that little red, probably a 20th of that entire circle is the total red meat consumption of Americans on a daily basis. If you look closely, they are eating more vegetables and fruit than red meat and drinking more dairy, eating dairy than red meat. But for some reason, Ocasio-Cortez and others like Bill Gates seem to gravitate to saying that red meat is destroying the planet. One of the things that's never discussed, Shawn, and I'm sure you noticed this, is the effects of petrochemicals and chemical pesticides and herbicides that are sprayed in the hundreds of millions of pounds and tons on crops that goes up into the air and affects the climate. Why doesn't anyone talk about that?
I think because the crops can be converted into very cheap ingredients that become very profitable. And I think that's basically what we have. We have an ability, and this is where these fake meat markets are coming from. They're trying to make a new market, and they're trying to increase, lower the cost of goods sold, increase their profit margin. And so if they can convince you that meat is bad for you or bad for the environment, and you can and you believe that, you'll eat their sort of fake processed slop. Hey, it's great for them, great for their bottom line. So I think we're just seeing I think it's a lot of this financial conflict of interest with this.
It always is, right? It's always about greed and money. But interestingly enough, they're failing miserably. I think I read a statistic that for every dollar worth of one of these fake burger products that it's costing them $1.20. So they're upside down already because no one's buying it. Literally no one's buying it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you see the Beyond Meat stock ticker, it's down, I think, something like, from $250 to $30 now over the last couple of years, and they've never made a profit. The adoption of this stuff is continuing to go down. They for all the money and the marketing that they've done, and they've spent tens and hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing this stuff, it really has fallen flat on the consumers. I think the consumers realize it's just garbage, and I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to catch on like they want it to.
Okay, so let's get into some of the meat and potatoes, or just meat of my discussion today with you. I think a lot about meat, by the way. And I think about it from the standpoint of what nutrients are in that meat that I'm eating that I need, that people are telling me I have to take vitamins for. Has anyone assayed beef to identify the amount of vitamin C and other nutrients that are not listed on the USDA's? USDA acts like there's no vitamin C in beef, but there really is. Has anyone gone to the extent of looking at beef and saying, look, all this stuff is in there?
So there was a really neat study done by Stefan Van Vliet out of Duke University about 2 years ago, and they compared the Impossible Burger to meat. Beef basically has about 55,000 unique compounds. It's not just a little bit of fat and protein and vitamins. There's 55,000 compounds that are unique to meat. And, we get into creatine and carnitine and taurine and on and on and on. And they compared that to, say, like this Impossible Burger, and they only saw there was a 10% overlap. So even though if you look at the label on the Impossible Burger, it's very similar protein, fat, carbohydrate content, or but they're not even close. And yes, there is vitamin C in meat. It's the USDA never even bothered to assay it. There's been some independent labs that have done that. I think the German national body has done that. So there is a small amount. There's adequate enough to prevent any kind of vitamin C issues from what I've seen. But yeah, I mean, you should interview. You look at Stefan Van Vliet. He's got a great paper on this topic, this very subject.
Okay, so I've come to the conclusion after doing this show for 16 years that almost all autoimmune disorders are either linked to or driven by the consumption of plant-based foods. For some reason, they tend to trigger the immune system. And there's a lot of people living with histamine disorders that they don't realize it's from what they're eating. Have you noticed this, that once you eliminate plants, a lot of these autoimmunities just go away?
Absolutely. This is something I see literally on a daily basis. I mean, whether it's multiple sclerosis or Crohn's disease or psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, I have seen such a tremendous amount of success by people, going on a really strict elimination diet. And most of what they're eliminating are the plant foods. There's great work from, I think, Boston University. Alessio Faisano has done great work looking at gut permeability and its association with autoimmune diseases. And it's a very nice correlation. And so, yes, I think food has a huge impact on autoimmunity.
Okay, so given that, are there any primitive cultures or any cultures we can go back to that exclusively weaned children from breast milk to meat? Because in this day and age, the strained peas and the strained cabbage, what happens if we take a child and never introduce these foods that are linked to disease states and put them right from breast milk to meat? Is there anybody talking about this?
Well, I've talked about it, and there are some interesting data on that. And yeah. I mean, historically, populations such as obviously the circumpolar populations that what everyone hears about, but there's the Sami, the Nene, and all these other tribes, through Scandinavia and Russia. I mean, there's some Nilotic African tribes that were basically animal-based. Some of the Mongolians traditionally were basically meat-based. So yeah, weaning children onto whole food animal products is very good. And in fact, there's a nice study looking at mammalian brain growth and looking at the wild based on weaning times and the brain size. The only plausible way that humans could grow that brain in the wild was by inclusion of animal products, including animal fat. Now, what we've done now is we've hacked that system by creating all this processed, powdered, highly energy dense food so we can get the energy requirements. But in the wild, we don't eat powders in the wild. Wild humans are not eating powderized flours and sugars and grains and things like that. this doesn't exist. The technology is not there. Our teeth don't do that. We don't turn food into powder with our teeth. We break it into small bite-sized pieces and swallow it. And so, yeah, I mean, the data clearly supports high nutrient dense, calorically dense foods like animal products for brain development as a child. Absolutely.
So now that you've invoked the powderized products, we learned on this show probably 8 or 9 years ago that acellular carbohydrates, basically anything turned into a flour, is digests in the wrong area in the gut. It digests up in the stomach, where opportunistic rogue microbes are fed by it. That if you were eating a whole food intact, it would digest further down. And the argument was that eating flour-based foods or acellular carbohydrates fed these rogue microbes. Now, I just did a show the other day on multiple sclerosis where they identified a couple of microbes in the gut that seem to be driving the development of the lesions on the outside of the brain, the ceramides from certain fats, C26 fats, but also L-tyrosine and what's the one that makes serotonin? 5-HTP. I can't think of the name of but anyway, these two amino acids are driving some of these brain changes. And I have to wonder if we have the same problem with powderized proteins feeding microbes in the wrong spot in the gut and turning good things into bad.
Yeah, I mean, and you're correct in that our digestive system is set up for a very sequential and temporal, digestive process. And so we have things called incretin hormones, GLP-1, GIP, that are found in different areas of the gut, and they're meant to be stimulated in a sequential fashion over a certain period of time. By eating these powders, whether it's flours or protein powders, you kind of bypass a lot of that stuff, and you end up with very abnormal metabolic responses, weird absorption patterns to glucose surges and insulin glucagon stimulation when it's not how we're designed to be. And, not to mention the fact that probably this is leading to issues with gut permeability beyond that. So yes, I think those things are not how we're designed to eat this. We're just not designed to eat powders. I mean, your teeth don't make powder. You'd have to chew for a long time to turn something to powder, right?
And it's tryptophan I couldn't think of. Thank you, Patrick Rogers. Patrick Rogers is a Renaissance man. He processes his own cows. He grows his own vegetables. Great guy. So do you eat pork?
Occasionally. It's not. It's a very minor part of my diet, but once in a while, and a lot of times it's in the form of bacon. But I eat probably still 98% of my food consumption is still beef.
So I have this theory that pork is a better choice for humans than beef. Hear me out. So and you may have. I would be surprised to hear someone else has had this thought, but I've always wondered about the cannibals. If you're eating other human flesh, are you getting a more appropriate nutrients because you're a human? Okay, say I knew it right now. Right now, people are going, "Oh, Carl lost his mind," but we can't eat humans. But pigs are the closest to humans. Their digestive system, we use their valves in heart transplants. We take Armour thyroid, which is porcine thyroid. Could it be that pork is a more appropriate? Wait. Eliminate the bad pork that's raised the wrong ways, just like the CAFO cows. Could it be that pork is a more appropriate protein for humans?
Well, certainly pork is the number one protein eaten worldwide, if you don't already know that, because it's so popular in Asia. Pork outnumbers beef quite a bit. So, and there are a lot of quote unquote healthy populations in Asia. You can look at that, and they're big pork eaters. So certainly, I can see where they make the argument. There's an interesting study that Michael Richards from Max Planck University, who's done a lot of the isotope data, which you may be familiar with, looking at humans and Neanderthals and how much meat they ate back, in the 50, 100,000 years ago. But they also did studies looking at Pacific Islanders and found that basically, even though they lived on the island, basically what they did was they fed fish to pigs to fatten up the pigs. They didn't eat the fish that much. They just basically ate the pigs. And so that was their cuisine of choice. And so, yeah, and I agree that I think, obviously the way the animal is raised is going to impact its nutritional profile to a degree. But I see a lot of people that do well on pork. Obviously, the United States beef is king. It's just the way we are because we produce the most in the world and it tastes good. And I think it's a pretty good food overall. But I personally don't have any problems with suggesting people try pork. There's some people don't tolerate it. I've seen that. But I mean, I think pork is in general a very good food.
How many times a day do you eat, Shawn?
I would say most days it's two. I mean, that's been my pattern. I mean, there's some days I'll eat once or three times or four times, but I'd say 95% of the time I'm eating 2 meals a day.
And you consume about what, 4 or 5 pounds of beef a day right now?
I mean, right now probably closer to about 3.5 to 4. I mean, it's somewhere in there. That's my kind of weight neutral. That keeps me sustained at weight. At my current weight, which is about 245 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I am too right now. But I think you carry a little more muscle than me. So are there any potential nutrient deficiencies? Most elimination diets, especially the vegan, and how doctors promote a vegan diet is beyond me because it's guaranteed to give you nutrient deficiencies. But is there any nutrient deficiency potential in a straight carnivore diet?
Well, I mean, certainly if you look at an RDA chart and say that I'm gonna meet these markers for RDA, you can run into issues with that. Now you can make up for that from eating dairy and seafood and some organ meats. You can have a completely RDA, replete diet on a carnivore diet. So you can make it happen with all food. Now, a lot of people in practice, they don't do that. They eat, they just eat steak and eggs and they still do pretty well. And they don't seem to have any signs and symptoms of nutrient deficiency. So eventually you may be aware of the fact that Harvard University late last year did a study on carnivores, and we did 2,000 people, and they surveyed them for any signs of nutrient deficiency. Basically, they found none. And so it was, it doesn't seem to be showing up clinically, despite maybe some theoretical concerns about vitamin C and perhaps folate, and some people have seen maybe manganese might be hard to get. But in calcium is another one that some people would say is difficult to get. But we're not seeing it show up clinically as a problem. So that's, at the end of the day, that's what counts.
So what about iron, right? I am on HRT, and I do have a blast and cruise protocol that I use where I'm on higher doses than normal sometimes. And I tend to have to go and donate blood because my TIBC and ferritin levels, which ferritin in and of itself is not a good indicator, but my iron levels do get high. Do you have any trouble with iron?
Personally, I don't, and I'm not on TRT or anything like that. But I mean, one of the things that's interesting about iron handling in the human body is, it's mostly a function of how much we absorb at a time. And obviously, I'm eating a lot of iron. I'm eating 3-4 pounds of red meat a day, so I'm consuming a lot of iron. But likely, I don't absorb a huge amount of it. And what's interesting is iron handling and how much we absorb through the gut is regulated by a hormone called hepcidin. Hepcidin is produced by the liver. And what's interesting is hepcidin is secondarily under the regulation of insulin. And so when your insulin is not so high, hepcidin probably leads to the fact that you're not going to absorb as much iron. So I've never had high iron issues, and I've checked it, I've checked it a few times and it's always been kind of normal range. My hemoglobin is normal, so I've not had issues with that.
So when someone goes on a carnivore diet, it's just, I send your Instagrams to so many people. I have a cousin who has Lyme disease, and you published one, a woman who sent you a really nice message saying that all of her Lyme disease symptoms have gone away since she's been carnivore for under a year, actually. And when these people do this and they have mitigation of all of their symptoms, do they ever decide, well, I'm going to start introducing other foods to see if I can identify which the culprits are? Or do they you suggest just staying carnivore for the rest of your life?
No, I actually encourage people to try to reintroduce stuff if they want to. I mean, again, some people don't want to. There's people that are so content and happy, and it's given them so much health and joy that they're not interested in introducing. But I'm not opposed to somebody doing it. In fact, our company, that is one of the things we're using AI to figure out what foods likely pair with what diseases and what demographic populations. And so certainly, I would say the majority of the people that do a carnivore diet for periods of time ultimately end up on some modification where they're, maybe 90% carnivore and they have 10% fruits and vegetables or something like that, and they do just fine. And like I said, I applaud them for finding out what works for them. At the end of the day, I think the biggest message that I want to get out there is meat is a health food. Meat is a superfood, and we should be eating more of it, not less of it. And if the more we eat of that, and again, it also displaces junk from the diet. The more you eat of meat, the less you're going to want to eat that garbage that they're putting out there, and that's a really powerful phenomenon.
So you've really, like whack-a-mole, you're really up here now. Like everybody knows who Dr. Shawn Baker is, and everybody knows that you're the carnivore guy. And everybody knows that there are people in droves singing the praises of switching to a carnivore diet and saying, my doctor lied to me, colorful foods and all this sort of stuff. Are you getting any backlash at all from the powers that be, from the mainstream medical orthodoxy?
Well, I mean, it depends who you call the mainstream medical orthodoxy. I mean, there's a lot of people in the space that are, it's all about calories or, probably the plant-based people. They've always pushed back, and they always will. I mean, that's their job, I suppose. I mean, they're defending an ideology. I'm out there just saying these are results. Show me your results. If it's good, we should say, look, there's something here. Yeah, I mean, I always get some degree of pushback. There's been censorship, as you know, on social media about talking about certain issues, and I think even discussing let's get healthy is now being considered problematic. We shouldn't talk about health because it's discriminatory in some way, or racist or fascist or whatever, just trying to be healthy. Yeah, there is some pushback for sure. Hopefully it won't result to like the removal of your voice, which is a complete tragedy.
I've come to the conclusion. I used to tell Ron Penna, I don't understand why my show isn't more popular. And he said to me, you should just think it as a club. Clubs let certain people in and don't let other people in. And he said, in your case, the password is critical thinking. He says, not everybody's going to like your show. And as a result of that, I started to think of things differently. Like I thought about this virus. Had we let it run its course, it would have culled the herd of the sickest people in our population. And that probably would have been a good thing, because the Black Plague created a renaissance where resources were available to people who were going to do things with them. And, I kind of feel like the people who give backlash to you, their genes won't be in the gene pool 100 years from now, because they'll keep doing this stupid stuff. And maybe they'll do stupid stuff early enough where they don't have children. And so I kind of feel like this is a slow moving pandemic, if you will, where it's going to isolate and remove people from the population who aren't critical thinkers or aren't looking at stuff and going, wow, all these people are getting better. Like, why am I eating all these vegetables? Why don't I just become carnivore? You ever think of that?
Well, I mean, certainly there's, again, with the pandemic, I mean, we just blew this opportunity to say, look, why don't we work on metabolic health and improved exercise? I mean, we know, I mean, every physician knows that people that are immunocompromised, obese, elderly are going to have to struggle with this stuff. And the fact that we ignored that is just tragic. But yeah, I mean, I think there's certain people, I think the real tragedy or the problem is if these people that want to bring you down with them, that's the thing where they legislate, hey, we're gonna, like in New York, and I'm not sure where you are, Carl, but New York has passed that law where the New York public schools, meatless Mondays on Monday, and then vegan Fridays on Friday. I mean, these poor kids that depend on the school system for their sustenance are being, basically nutritionally deprived. And so, it's almost being forced in a lot of cases. So for some of us, it's not even voluntary. If you're in a fortunate position where you can feed yourself and determine what you get to eat, that's a privileged position in many cases.
Yeah, it's really something. I want to take our first break, and when we come back, I want to talk about something that Dr. Rhonda Patrick pushed out there. I think I sent you the research, and I'd like to get your opinion of it. I think I know where you're going to go with this, but I'll promote something for you. So you have something going on right now. It's like a GoFundMe for something that you're getting people to invest in. Talk about that.
Yeah, so our company is Rivero, and basically we are basically getting people off drugs and reversing chronic disease, and we want to scale that. We've raised about $4 million as our seed round. We're raising just a little bit more before we close it out, but the folks investing in this are investing in a new style of healthcare, where instead of focusing on disease management where we just give you another pill. Our goal and our whole focus is let's get these people healthy. Let's get them, and let's talk about curing disease. Let's talk about reversing disease. I think it's a legitimate goal to have in mind, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get there. It's going to be food, it's going to be lifestyle, it's going to be exercise, it's going to be support. It's going to have physicians that their mission is to do this rather than the standard of care, which is here's another pill, here's another pill. So that's the short answer of what we're doing. So we're raising.
How do people get there? How do people get there if they want to donate?
So if you go to republic.com/Revero, and it's REVERO, that is our public fundraising page for most people. They can invest as little as $150. We've had a lot of private investors go outside of that for larger amounts, but for the average person, if they want to just kick in a couple $100, and as we grow and scale, which I'm very certain we will, they get a return on their investment, which is nice.
Yeah. It was something I was so Patrick Rogers was saying that Meatless Monday is child abuse. I think it is as well. All right, look, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more of Dr. Shawn Baker. Stay tuned. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHK-Cu, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expression of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. Restore Cell's Stem Cell Awakening Serum, along with their other products, contains potent formulations of blue copper peptides and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. Remodel your skin today. If you'd like a shortcut to better sleep, more energy, and calmer, more stable moods, then you should make sure you're supplementing with magnesium daily. Let me tell you why. About 75% of people are magnesium deficient. This deficiency can lead to higher levels of anxiety, irritability, trouble sleeping, and low energy. It can even contribute to foot and leg cramps while you sleep. Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers is the single best magnesium supplement in the world. Simply take 2 capsules before you go to bed, and you'll be amazed by the improvements in your mood and energy levels and how much more rested you feel when you wake up. I take Magnesium Breakthrough every night, and I sleep better because I use it. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use the code SHR10 during checkout to save 10% off and get free shipping. Check it out. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. Are you 35 or older? Every year after puberty, your growth hormone decreases sometimes by 50% by the age of 35, and it only keeps going down from there. This affects everything from making it harder to recover from workouts, sleep, and a general loss of a sense of well-being. It also affects your ability to get and stay lean. BioPro Plus is the first of its kind, 100% non-synthetic alternative to prescription synthetic growth hormone treatments. All the benefits without any of the needles or side effects and 100% safe. Previously only available through doctors, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/biopro, that's BIOPRO, and use code SHR30 for $30 off today. More than 240 million Americans take supplements daily in pill form, but poor nutrient absorption means the promised results are rarely achieved. Healthy Cell uses a clinically proven patent-pending gel delivery system that increases absorption by 165% over pill form. Go to shrnetwork.biz/healthycell, that's HEALTHYCELL today and use the code SHR to save 20% off your purchase of Healthy Cell supplements. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Shawn Baker. So recently, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, fan of her work, she pushed something that I hear some feedback.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
It's gone now. She pushed something out saying that just 3/4 pound of beef a day basically turns on some cancer-producing genes. The study she cited was dietary manipulation of oncogenic mRNA expression in human rectal mucosa, a randomized trial. It was from 2014. And I sent that to you. Did you have a chance to look at that?
Yeah, I did. I looked at that and I've commented on that. And so, I mean, just, again, when we look at the overview of this, we're seeing it, obviously it's 300 grams of lean red meat. So does regular meat make a difference to that? We don't know. We also know is a 30% increase in this even clinically meaningful or significant? 30% of a tiny, tiny amount, maybe just a tiny amount that has no actual bearing on the development of cancer or not. So we don't know that. So we don't know the clinical applicability. But I think the more important aspect of this is what they used to mitigate this. They used butyrated resistant starch. And so the thought is the butyrate or the butyric acid is going to somehow mitigate this. And we've seen this with fiber, the same sort of belief that fiber is going to lead to more butyrate, which is going to have a protective effect on the colonic mucosa. The interesting thing about that is that butyrate is very closely related to something called beta hydroxybutyrate, which is a ketone body. And we know that if you're on a low carb diet, a carnivore diet, a meat-based diet, you're producing a significant amount of beta hydroxybutyrate, which is very rapidly interchanged to butyrate. And so you basically get the same effect anyway. So this may have relevance if you're eating meat in the context of a junk food diet. And we don't know what the baseline diet was for these people. It was probably standard American diet, and we added, some lean meat to that, and we saw these changes. But again, does that mean the meat's a problem, or does it mean the background diet and that environment is really the problem? And I think this is where we get a lot of these confusion about this. And what I see is like, if you stick any healthy food into a bad gut, you're probably going to get some negative problems. And I think that's the problem is if we fix our gut by not feeding it, like we mentioned, the floury, junky, highly processed food, you're probably talking about a very different situation.
Yeah, and the first thing I thought of is who's living on 3/4 pound of red meat a day? They're eating something else. Why is it the red meat that's the culprit here? You know what I mean? That's the first thing I thought of. But I appreciate your view on this. So a lot of people love to ride the coattails of your success by maybe ridiculing or challenging some of the things that you're learning. And let's be clear. When you started N equals many, it wasn't your objective to be the carnivore guy, right?
No, and it's still not. I mean, it's never been my objective. My objective is just let's figure out what's getting people healthy. As a physician, my desire is just get people free from disease. And so it just so happened that that's what worked.
So the FDA recommends people who have the gastric bypass surgery go on something called a low residue diet, where they can't eat a lot of fiber and stuff like that. Do we have any data from people on low residue diets outside of potential nutrient deficiencies they suffer because of the radical resectioning of their gut? Can't we extrapolate any data from that says, hey, look, eating only meat isn't a bad thing at all?
I don't know if we can get the data from there. I mean, there's other sources which I think are probably reasonable to look at. I mean, there's about 7 or 8 studies now, modern studies looking at people on strictly meat-based diets. Every one of them has been positive. So if you're going to criticize meat, I say you should look at meat and exclusion. You can't that graphic you showed at the beginning of the show where the red meat amount is a tiny amount. In fact, the average American eats about 2 ounces of beef a day. That's a minuscule amount compared to the pound and a half of processed junk food. So this tiny amount of meat clearly is not being studied effectively. And so when we put people on meat-based diets, there are 7 or 8 studies. Every one of them is clearly positive, and so that should be the default setting until somebody does studies that show negative outcomes, because they haven't been done yet. But I mean, as far as these low residue diets, it's often recommended also with inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis.
Right.
And yes, the results are generally beneficial. So we're removing the fiber. These things potentially act as gut irritants for people, and we see that. So there's actually data that supports that.
Leslie Aiello used to be the president of the Wenner-Gren Foundation in New York, and I had the great fortune to get to know her when I first started doing the show in 2005, 2006. And we talked about the paleo diet, which she felt that the paleo diet was misrepresenting the real Paleolithic diet. And she's, I remember her saying to me, you can't eat the apple that your paleo ancestors ate, because apples have been selected and bred to be sweeter and sweeter. And the apples that paleo people ate probably taste like cork, but that's what they ate. And she made me think about fiber differently. She quoted, she actually authored that paper that went around the internet that said, when we started eating meat, our brains got bigger and our guts got smaller. And she said to me, fiber is good for somebody who's already metabolically deranged. But fiber would not be a good thing for you in Paleolithic time, because it would slow down digestive motility. You wouldn't be able to consume as many calories every day, and you would literally wither away. But today, we have people going to the refrigerator, eating high glucose raising foods. So fiber serves a purpose to slow gastric emptying. But it's a bad idea for your paleo ancestors. And she said, you should not try to eat the fiber that your paleo ancestors ate, because when they stopped eating that fiber, that's when they changed. The brain got bigger and the gut got smaller. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, I'm very familiar with Aiello's and Wheeler's paper, the expensive tissue hypothesis, which was very popular, and I think it still has a lot of relevance to that. And yeah, I mean, I think that fiber, we hear a lot about, you should eat more fiber. Fiber is an essential nutrient. I really literally have not had any significant fiber in 6 years, and I'm fine. I mean, nothing bad has happened to me. So it's clearly not essential. And I do think it's conditionally beneficial. If you're on a standard American junk food diet, yeah, you want to mitigate that glucose surge that you're going to get eating apples rather than apple juice. It's going to have a conditional benefit, but it is not this super magical thing that we all need to eat mounds of. I usually look at it this way: if there's something that's going to displace junk food from the diet, then it's probably a good thing. But if it's displacing meat from the diet, it's probably not as good. And so that's the way I look at things. So if you're eating a meat-based diet with no junk food and the rest is fruits and vegetables, it's far better than eating a junk food diet, with or without, vegetables or meat. So that is something. Yeah, I mean, there's several studies looking at fiber. One of the ones that I think is really interesting is there was a study, I think 2014 or 2012, looking at 2,000 or 3,000 people that underwent colonoscopies, and they selected them in quartiles based on the fiber consumption they had. The people that had the most fiber had the most disease. They had the most diverticulosis, and it was a pretty clear relationship. Those that ate the least fiber had the least disease. So it's one of those things where I think it's very much again conditional. And again, if you're eating junk food all the time, then yeah, putting fiber in the diet is probably going to be better for you. But if you're not, do you need much of it or any of it? I don't think you do.
And that leads me to a favorite topic of mine, and that is poop. I think you can tell a lot by looking. A lot of people don't want to look in the toilet after they take a dump. They're afraid. It's like, oh, I don't want to see that. But and I even said this during the onset of the pandemic. I did a video, and I said, who are these people hoarding toilet paper? Like, do they just crap all day long? Like, I don't understand this. when you start carnivore, a lot of people think, oh, I'm constipated. No, the effects of a low residue diet is you don't produce a lot of poop. And when you do poop, it's solid, it's well formed, and literally like one wipe and you're done. But the American population, they literally crap Carvel ice cream. I've come to the conclusion, because they have to spend an hour and a half in a whole roll of toilet paper wiping. That alone tells you that your diet is wrong for you. You think I'm crazy?
Well, I think we can learn a lot from our digestive function. And, I think if you've got, bowel movement problems, if you've got bloating, gas all the time, to me, it indicates one of two things. Either your digestive system has got some problems or you're eating the wrong food. And most often it's just the wrong food. Your digestion should be relatively silent. It shouldn't be something that you have much notice of. I mean, breathing for me is effortless, and I have no real conscious awareness of my breathing typically. Same thing with my heart beating, or when I walk around, my knees don't typically hurt. If any of those things were problematic or painful for me, I would be alarmed. But we seem to accept my gut's bloated, I've got this discomfort, I've got this reflux, and we kind of accept it as normal, and it's really not. But as far as, the bowel movements are concerned, you alluded to the N=many experiment we did back in, I think, early 2017. We tracked bowel frequency on the people, and what we saw was on average about one bowel movement a day was what these people on a carnivore diet had, as opposed to 2, 3, sometimes 4 of these people eating these high fiber diets where they're spending half their day in the toilet. And I think, it's not really, you think about it as a primitive man. If you had to go to the bathroom every 2 hours, it's not very effective and safe.
No, you're going to become food. If you have to crap every 2 or 3 hours, you're eventually going to become food, because that's when you're the most vulnerable, when you're doing that. No, you're absolutely right. And I love these vegans. I think there was a girl that you just sat and ate a steak listening to, talking about that flatulence, farting all day long is a sign of health. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, that's got to be just insane. How do they promote these lies? I get it. The end justifies the means. If we can get everybody to stop eating animals, we win. But it's at the cost and expense of health.
Well, it's they have this sort of, well, I know what I'm doing is healthy because I'm eating all these beans and legumes and eating mounds of salad. I must be healthy. And anything that occurs with this, the fact that I lose muscle mass means I'm not fat. The fact that I'm farting all day means that I'm healthy. They just justify anything in the way to support their ideology. And so it's like, why would we think, if my dog is farting all the time, I'm like, what the hell's wrong with the damn thing? I don't know, right? So it's the same thing with humans. We're not supposed to be constantly we're not herbivores. And I think some people try to turn us into these things. We're clearly not designed for that.
Did we learn anything from Stephenson with the Inuit, and when he tried to reduplicate his results at was it Bellevue Hospital or one of the hospitals in New York? What did we learn? Did any of that stuff carry through?
Well, we learned that human beings can survive on meat fine. And he did it, he claimed that he did it for a decade when he lived with the Inuit, and they didn't believe him. And, he said, okay, I'll jump up to the table and do it. He himself and a guy named Carson Anderson spent a year. Much of it was done in a metabolic ward. They examined and watched them the whole time. At the end of the year, there was nothing wrong with them. They were completely healthy. And so they had no vitamin deficiencies, no problems, no aches, no pains, no rashes, anything. So it clearly shows that we know that humans can live on just meat and nothing else. And, we're seeing this duplicated and repeated day in and day out in modern times with all these people doing this carnivore diet.
We're going to take our next commercial break, and when we come back, we've got questions to work through, okay? And then I'll get you off at the top of the hour, I promise, okay? Sit tight. We're talking with Dr. Shawn Baker. We'll be right back with more. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% 15% off your entire first order. Have you been struggling to achieve results in the gym? Trouble sleeping through the night? Overwhelmed with stress or anxiety? Look no further than Infiniwell supplements. They have designed products to address specific needs like muscle growth, hormone balance, sleep, and anxiety from the first use. Infiniwell helps you live well. Go to shrnetwork.biz/bewell, that's BEWELL, and use code SHR20 and start living well today. Plant medicine has become all the rage for mental optimization. Now there's an ancient plant medicine rapidly growing in popularity that experts believe might just be the alcohol of the future. It's called True Kava. Kava is a natural food-grade elixir that has been used for over 3,000 years by South Pacific Islanders as safe, non-addictive alternative to drugs and alcohol. By naturally boosting the brain's main feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, Kava provides you with both increased relaxation and mental clarity at the same time. True Kava is a new form of stabilized full-spectrum traditional kava that is third-party lab tested for quality and safety. Go to shrnetwork.biz/true kava, and that's TRUKAVA, all one word, and use code SHR for 25% off today.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
Most people have heard of phytoestrogens, but did you know there are beneficial phytoandrogens? The top source of these is pine pollen. It even contains trace amounts of testosterone and DHEA. If you're looking for a 100% natural testosterone booster, this is worth trying. Lots of men love it, and it even works for women. Lost Empire Herbs offers the highest quality wild harvested, non-irradiated pine pollen backed by a 365-day money-back guarantee. It works for you, or you don't have to pay for it with nothing to send back. Go to shrnetwork.biz/lost empire. Use code SHR. Get 15% off your order today. C60, also known as Buckminster fullerene, is the most powerful, most versatile antioxidant in the world. It's been shown in studies to double the lifespan of rodents. We all know the importance of taking antioxidants to slow aging, reduce inflammation, and improve mitochondrial function and energy production. But there are literally hundreds of antioxidants that would cost you thousands of dollars to take every day. I take one. I take C60 from C360 Health. Revive and Rejuvenate are two blends that harness the power of C60. Don't waste another minute. Go to shrnetwork.biz/revive and use the code SHR for 15% off and free shipping inside the United States today.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
All right, welcome back. We're going to get through everybody's questions. Real quick, one thing I want to mention. So Lane Norton has been a target. I don't think he's talking about you. He's talking about Carnivore in general, how idiots and all that sort of stuff. Did you ever debate him?
I did do a debate with him a couple of years ago on Mark Bell's podcast, and
I didn't realize that.
He conceded that basically if people are getting healthier, it's fine. I mean, and this is the thing. I think that he'll say that people on low carb ketogenics and carnivore diets can get healthier. He's conceding that, which is clearly the only point I'm making. And I know he said that he thinks that a vegan diet would be better because of fiber, and this is one of the things he said, primarily because of the fiber content in the diet. And again, of course, I would sort of take issue with that for the reasons sort of we talked about. But yeah, I mean, it's something that a lot of people. When you just approach people to say, I've got people that are overweight, diabetic, depressed, and I put them on a carnivore diet and all that goes away, how do you refute that? I mean, do you just say that, well, they would have been better if they stayed sick? I mean, it's nonsensical.
Yeah, no, I get it. So I don't know who this is because their security preferences won't let their name come through on Facebook, but they're asking what you think about the raw carnivore diet. For people with epilepsy who have energy depletion and auras from eating cooked foods, I've had seizures after enduring eating due to something digestive going on. What do you think about? I mean, I guess really the big thing is if you could tolerate raw and you get fresh meat that's not dirty. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are many people that do a raw version and do pretty well. There certainly is a concern, and I have seen people get sick from contaminated meat, and it's not a minor thing. It can be very serious. So you have to be very careful about that. The debate about whether raw meat has more nutrition or not versus cooked meat is very much contentious. There's literature that can support either. There's a nice study on pigs, and you mentioned the similarity of pigs in human anatomy. They did a study on pigs, and they were feeding the pigs actually ribeye steaks and ground beef, and they looked at different levels of doneness, and they found that actually like a medium cooked ribeye had the most bioavailable protein for them. And so it's one of those things. And again, what I would say is, if you already have an answer, I mean, if you're seeing that you're having problems with cooked meat and it's causing seizures, and if you're eating raw meat and it's not, then there's your answer right there. Just be mindful where you source your meat from. I like, personally, I think it's great if you just put a mild sear on something,
Right.
sear the outside, touch it real quick, and then the inside is essentially raw, but you really reduced your risk for contamination, which is a real concern.
Yeah. Because that's where the contamination is, on the surface.
Right.
They're not injecting it into the muscle and then you're getting it in the middle of the meat. It's just basically sanitizing the surface of the animal protein.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. That's why ground beef has a higher problem with that, because the surface area is much higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. How is the doctor preparing? And I know you really have like you're almost like a sous chef now when you prepare your meat. I see you do different things to it. How are you preparing 3.5 to 4 pounds of beef a day? And that would be about $25 a day, roughly, in just beef alone. And if it's grass fed, maybe more expensive. Is it really that expensive? I don't think so.
It depends. I mean, you can do that. I mean, I think one of the I get some of my meat is bought in bulk from I get a side of beef, and that helps with the cost quite a bit. But how do I prepare it? I mean, I do a lot of stuff where I'll either reverse sear or I'll sous vide, and I sear it, and it's literally minimal work. I spend 20 minutes a day cooking food. I mean, and 20 and maybe 40, 25 minutes eating it. I don't take too long to eat my food. So it's a really minor time commitment for me.
Elaine Remains says carnivore diet didn't help me. Plus it made anxiety go through the roof for me, but I liked how my muscles were a bit stronger. What could cause a metabolic shift where anxiety would be an onset in an ultra low carb diet like that?
Well, I mean, a lot of people often undereat because, it becomes so profoundly satiating that they undereat. That's the biggest issue I see, is many people undereat. And many people come to this with, I want to lose weight, I'm going to go on a carnivore diet, so I'm going to intentionally restrict calories. And I think that's a problematic approach. That could be the situation. We also know that, with any diet, even low carb diets are included, we do see an initial shift that, like cortisol increases, inflammatory markers may go up initially, after for 3 weeks or so, and then it sort of levels out. So it could be the time. The biggest thing I see is people are undereating fat. They're trying to eat too lean, or they're not eating enough.
And that's really what happened to Stefansson when he tried to emulate the Inuit diet. He was eating a lot of lean meat and he didn't feel good. He wasn't getting the fat.
Well, he wasn't trying to emulate the Inuit diet. They made him do that. The researchers said you're going to eat lean meat, and he didn't want to do that. And he noticed he had a lot of diarrhea and problems. But the Inuit diet was actually higher in fat. They eat a lot of seal oil and, the fat from these marine mammals, which tend to be very fatty. So.
Taylor C is on Facebook asking speaking of deficiencies in carnivore, is there an issue with loss of polyphenols and flavonoids? Do we even need polyphenols and flavonoids in reality?
We probably don't need them, but to speak to that question, cows have in their meat, they actually have these things. They eat them and they store them in their fat, and it's something that they actually the cow's diet of plant compounds, these so-called phytonutrients, is much more diverse than a human diet, because they can eat a whole variety. They're eating grass, but they're eating all these other forbs and other forage that makes them a really rich source of these foods, which is actually in their meat. Again, Stefan Van Vliet demonstrated that meat has some of these polyphenols and flavonoids and other vitamin nutrients in them. So you're getting a more diverse amount within the meat anyway.
This comes from Cola Quench on YouTube. He's asking if you've ever taken the Omega Quant test to measure the membrane fatty acid percentages.
I personally have not. I'm aware of people that have done that, and generally it shows a fairly favorable omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. The biggest driver of that really is not going to be beef per se. It's going to be seafood, though. If you're really interested in bumping up your omega-6, you would do better to eat some fatty fish.
Yeah, I love fish too. I love salmon. Elaine Remain says I should interview Brad Marshall. He's been on the show. You obviously
I've interviewed him too, so I'm aware of Brad's work.
Yeah, he's great. He's got that whole thing about pigs eating fat and chickens, the type of fat that they feed them, and all that sort of stuff. I think. Let me see. Let me make sure I don't want to leave anybody out here. Oh, what about Jordan Peterson? He ate, I guess, he almost died from contaminated steak at a restaurant. But that's the difference. If you're going to eat raw or rare, you need to get it yourself and process and handle it yourself. You can't do that at a restaurant. Got to include organs. Yes, and that's the other thing. I did a show with Sally Fallon probably about 8 or 9 years ago where we talked about the importance of organ meat. Isn't this really what's missing in the human diet today? When I find a deer in the woods when I'm hunting, and I find a deer that's been run down by coyotes or coy dogs, they eat the entrails first. They use the part that we eat, they leave alone, but they go right into the gut and eat all of the viscera. Are we missing out here?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, and I'm pretty agnostic about that answer, quite honestly, and for a couple of reasons. One is, I've got data on 12,000 people doing the carnivore diet. Some do organs, some don't. The outcomes don't seem to be any different. The Harvard study, which looked at this very question, and I made sure they asked that question, basically showed no difference in outcomes with regard to nutrient deficiencies, who got off their diabetes med, whether or not they use organ supplements, vitamins or not. So that to me is a very, individual dependent sort of question. I clearly see people that say they feel better when they eat organ meats or they take a supplement. But likewise, I see people that don't really see a difference. So I think it may depend upon what your overall state is. If you're coming in from a pretty nutrient deficient diet, perhaps a vegan diet or a standard American diet, you may need in the beginning in order just to sort of catch up, really load up on some of these nutrients. One of the things about animals eating organs is one of the thoughts is they're trying to get more fat. And because most of these animals are hunting relatively lean animals, there's no fat on a deer except on its viscera. I mean, it's got the omental fat, the perinephric fat, the cardiac fat. And so they're going for a lot of that stuff as well. And so the other concern is, if you've got an animal, it doesn't keep long. It's not going to last very long. It's very hard to preserve organs. So you have to eat them pretty quickly and right away. And the other thing is that, relatively, how much do you need? If you look at a cow's liver weighs something like 10 pounds on a 500-pound carcass of otherwise meat. So it's a relatively small percentage. So how much you need is debatable. Can you substitute eggs for that? A lot of people will find that just including eggs sort of mitigates the need to eat organs. So it's, to my view, I don't know. I don't know if it's a black or white answer one way or the other. I think it depends.
Shawn, rock on, man. I love what you're doing. And I swear you're going to be a historic figure because you are challenging a lot of the nonsense out there, and people are using it and they're going, I'm getting better. Doc, how can you tell me this isn't good for me? I don't have rheumatoid arthritis anymore. So you're the best, man. I really love it.
And I appreciate that, Carl, and I'm going to do my best. But I mean, like I said, it's really the people that are willing to do that and to step up and say, hey, look, I want to take care of my health, and what happens. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, do something else. But I don't think we should demonize it.
Take care, brother.
Awesome, man. Thanks.
Take care. All right, we're going to take one quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by Will Harris from White Oak Pastures to talk about a study that they published, a peer-reviewed study in conjunction with the General Mills. I didn't know this, but General Mills buys beef for their Epic Jerky. I guess it's a brand from White Oak Pastures. So that's saying a lot. So stay tuned. We'll be right back to talk more about beef. Is everybody getting hungry? I am. See you in a minute. If If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that I have struggled to give up coffee for years. Coffee has destroyed my gut and it's impaired my health. Well, I haven't had coffee in months thanks to a product called Magic Mind. Magic Mind is the first nootropic blend I actually feel working. One shot and I'm good all day long. My memory is crystal clear and I'm able to function and have great focus without coffee or caffeine for that matter. If you want to try a product that really works, if you're like me and you want to give up coffee forever, or you just need something occasionally that will help you lift the brain fog, Magic Mind is your product. I promise you that this product you will feel when you use it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Magic Mind, all one word, and use the code SHR for a whopping 20% off your first order. Over 30 million men experience a form of erectile dysfunction. Meet Eddie, a device designed to help men strengthen and maintain their erections. Based on 2021 clinical trials, over 95% of men experience positive results wearing Eddie instead of relying on costly pills and experiencing side effects. I checked out Eddie by Giddy at shrnetwork.biz/Eddie. Eddie offers free resizes and the product works. Sign up for a subscription and save $20 off your first device with promo code SUPER20. That's SUPER20. A 60-day guarantee can't be beat. Treat ED with Eddie. Eddie by Giddy at shrnetwork.biz/Eddie. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. We're joined by Will Harris from White Oak Pastures. How you doing, Will?
Hey, Carl, doing good. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. And we're talking about my favorite thing, beef.
Mine too.
So I want to put this up again. I put this up at the beginning of Dr. Baker's interview because, and I keep this here every time we talk about nutrition, because I want to remind people that we are being lied to about beef, everything about beef, and especially how much we consume. This is from the USDA's own numbers. I would say less than, let's see, if I cut that in half and cut that in quarters and cut that in quarters, I would say 1/25 of what the average American eats day in and day out, week in and week out, is actually beef, red meat. We eat, if you're looking at this circle graph, we eat way more dairy, followed by vegetables, followed by fruits. We are already consuming very little beef. We are already consuming tons and tons of vegetables and dairy and fruits. So we're being lied to every day by people who are after our money. They want us to buy fake meat, even though it's not going to be good for us. So when we have this discussion, let's just keep this in mind, that the amount of beef we eat is already minuscule, and people like Ocasio-Cortez and Bill Gates, they're lying to us. Just stick with that for a second. So you and General Mills published a peer-reviewed study on the carbon footprint of the type of regenerative farming that you do there at White Oak Pastures. And it's funny because we hear all these people saying, we follow the science, but they're not following the science anymore when they ignore this study. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. You know, the science is junk science. You know, the figures showing the CO2 put up, the environmental impact is all done based on the feedlot model, which is very, very different. You know, a friend of mine, Nicole Hahn Nyman, wrote a book called The Righteous Pork Chop. And she says, it's not the cow, it's the how. And that's very, very important. To your previous point, Americans eat more sugar per year than we do beef.
Right. Yeah, that's actually on that. I ignore that one because my audience probably doesn't eat sugar. But yeah, look at the sugar is consumed at a greater, let's say 141 pounds of sugar a year versus, I don't know if I can read that. It's so small, but it looks like about 112 pounds of red meat a year. Yeah, we're being lied to. And if you don't think the government will lie to you, then you must have been asleep for the past 2 years during this pandemic. Okay, so talk about this study. This study looked at the amount of the carbon footprint, right, that your farm produces versus. Explain how they came up with this number here.
So we started transitioning over here at White Oak Pastures from the industrial model to what we do today, which is a pasture-based model, about 25 years ago. And sadly, I wish we had started taking scientific measurements 25 years ago, but we didn't know to do that. Fast forward, we changed the model. We started selling beef to Epic, which was an entrepreneurial couple started that's the jerky company. General Mills bought Epic and continued to buy from us, grass-fed beef from us. But they were a little concerned about some of the claims of being regenerative that the previous management, the entrepreneurial, not much to lose management was making. So they asked if we would do this environmental study called an LCA, life cycle assessment. It's a very, very expensive study that I could not have afforded to do, but they volunteered to pay for it. So we went through this painful study with an environmental engineering firm from Minneapolis called Qantas. And what it showed is that when I say painful, I mean a lot of soil sampling, a lot of record retrieval to see how much fuel we were burning, those kind of things. But at the end of the day, the findings were that we are actually sequestering 3.5 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent for every pound of grass-fed beef that we sell. And I was very happy to hear that, to have it quantified. But to be very honest, I already knew it. I mean, I could tell that the land had changed colors over the last 20 years. But our land.
Talk about. I want you to stay with that. So when you stand on your land and you look at your neighbor's land, their dirt is red and yours is black, right?
That is correct. And their land is about 0.5% organic matter, and ours is about 5% organic matter. To give you a perspective on that, 1% organic matter will absorb a 1-inch rain event in general sense.
Okay.
So my neighbor farm will absorb a 1/2-inch rain event, and the rest of it washes away to the Gulf of Mexico. Our land will absorb a 5-inch rain event.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So you don't have that runoff problem. So
and the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico and those kinds of things. Correct.
So when we talk about sequestering CO2, does that happen because they're grazing?
Okay, so that. Let me explain that to you. So, the junk science is that with cattle are putting up so much greenhouse gases, and if you think about it, yes, cattle do have belch and fart, but that happens. It happens.
Right.
But every bit of the carbon that those cattle eat used to be a greenhouse gas. The plants through photosynthesis breathe in carbon dioxide, other greenhouse gases. They turn it into cellulose and sugar. Some of it is pumped beneath the surface of the land in the form of roots. Some of it grows foliage, forage above the land. The cattle eat the forage. The roots slough off because there's no photosynthesizing surface area for a while. So the plant is literally acting like a pump, pulling in carbon dioxide, pumping it into the roots. Cattle eat it. When they eat it, some of it is turned into manure, dropped back on the land, much of which finds its way into the soil through insects and other physical natural phenomena. Some of it goes back up in the form of flatulence, but a lot of it is captured in those roots. When I told you that our land went from 0.5% to 5%, all that carbon came from greenhouse gas. I didn't put any carbon out there. All of it brought down. And when you start thinking about how many pounds of carbon that is, on a farm this size, it's thousands of tons of carbon.
That are literally being taken out of the air and vaulted in the ground. Now,
that's exactly right. And the argument you might hear from naysayers is that some of that carbon will find its way back up into the atmosphere, and they're right. When I say sequester, I'm actually taking a liberty. The carbon is actually cycling. It's stored in the air. Modern farming methods have released all that carbon, tillage, chemical fertilizers, those kind of things.
So the flatulence and that cows are experiencing could also be a result of they are literally eating this gas while they're eating the grass. So they're not manufacturing it; they're just passing it through.
Now, I got the big tip. Nothing manufactures carbon. Carbon is an element. It's on the periodic chart that you saw in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
It's not being made. It's being cycled in nature.
Right.
Unfortunately, some of it's supposed to be up there. Some of it's supposed to be down there. Our practices have gotten it out of balance. Too much is up here and not enough is down here.
Now, the naysayers will say, but in order for you to do the crop rotation and the animal rotations that you need to do in order to have a farm that runs so efficiently that it doesn't contribute anything to carbon, added carbon into the environment, you need 2.5 times the land. They'd say, oh my God, but we're talking about 2.5 times the land of a CAFO, right? Not the 2.5 times the land of an average farm.
It is true that it does take more land to raise cattle this way than it does in a CAFO. There's no question about that. Right. So much of this land is land that is unsuitable for a tomato field.
Right.
It's
hills, it's uphills, it's downhills. Cows will go uphill and graze, but a farmer's not going to plant an acre of corn on an uphill somewhere. And that's something I pointed out years ago. I did a blog post that shows that it costs more when you look at crop yield and you look at nutrient value and how long you can feed somebody on a single cow versus an acre of soy. Soy takes way more water. This is another lie. Soy takes way more water and doesn't even produce the nutrient value that a cow does. But that's another lie. The other lie is that land that they're using to raise cows is impeding our ability to grow good vegetables. No, nobody grows vegetables on the land that beef farmers use to raise their cows. You can't. It's non-arable land.
Well, and I think we do have to face the fact that this beautiful planet Earth that we inhabit does have a carrying capacity.
Mm-hmm.
There is a maximum number of people we can have on this planet, and what that number is something that's probably incalculable. I've heard so many people have taken a stab at it.
Right.
But the fact is, if acreage, just square feet on the ground, is the first resource we're going to run out of, cattle may not be as good as growing soy, conventionally growing soy. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. I could argue that it is, but let's just concede that. That's okay. If the first thing we're going to run out of is fossil fuel, I can feed a lot more people than a soy farmer.
Right.
If we're going to run out of fertilizer, the reductively mined phosphate and potash, I can feed more people than they can. If we're going to run out of water, I can feed more people than they can. If it's the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, no more fish down there, my feeding the earth is more resilient. I can go through dozens of scenarios in which what I do is far more resilient, will feed far more people than conventional row crop farming.
So Dr. Shawn Baker was on during the first half of the show. I don't know if I think you were in the green room. You may have caught some of his discussion, but he is. Are you familiar with him?
I'm pretty intimidated by the fact that I'm following Dr. Shawn Baker.
Well, what his work is showing is that beef specifically is a true superfood. Everybody likes to call things superfoods, but a superfood is something that you can eat for every meal, every day, every week, every month for the rest of your life and not end up with a nutrient deficiency. And his work is showing that beef is the only real superfood, and that people who go on the carnivore diet, they get rid of their rheumatoid arthritis, their fibromyalgia, they get rid of their blood pressure, all these great things. But we're being told by Bill Gates and others that beef is not only ruining the planet, but it's going to give you colon cancer and all this other stuff. And it's all a lie. So when you look at the small amount of beef that people eat now, and you look at the way you farm that's actually good for the planet, it's not neutral, it's good. So, there's do no damage, do damage, and make better. It's actually making the planet better. What I don't understand is why politicians aren't going, look, beef is good. We just need to find a better way to raise it. Why aren't people looking to you and other regenerative farmers for the answer?
Well, I think I can answer that question. Dr. Shawn Baker knows a lot more about nutrition than I do. I think I know a little bit about that. And what's true is so many people, so many Wall Street companies, so many Silicon Valley companies are making so much money with the existing industrial farming system and raising cattle industrially as part of that there's just an incredible amount of lobbyist pressure in DC. There's a tremendous amount of very loud voices screaming the ills of this kind of farming versus industrial farming. Centralized, industrialized commodity farming has impoverished rural America. And it has imprisoned our farm animals, our livestock. And it has, Shawn Baker may tell you, if he does, I believe it has ruined our health. And certainly I will tell you that it has been hell on our environment, from the water to the air to the climate. but there's a lot of people making a lot of money.
I want to plug. Hold on a second. I want to plug White Oak Pastures. Hold on one second. If you haven't found out about White Oak Pastures before, unplug it, please. Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to do 3 things at one time here. White Oak Pastures makes the single best animal protein in the world. They've got everything you can imagine. I love their pork, by the way, just for the record. And I want to talk to Will about pork when we come back. You can get 15% off your order by going to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak. Use the code SUPERHUMAN. Not only will you be able to eat the greatest animal protein in the world, whether it's chicken, pork, beef, I mean, he's got it all, but you'll contribute to saving the planet by eating at White Oak Pastures. They also have a lot of other stuff. I have a wallet now that I use. I have a belt that they put every piece of the animal to use, to good use. Nothing is wasted at White Oak Pastures. Again, shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak. Use the code SUPERHUMAN to shop today. Save 15% off. I love pork. I actually I just asked Shawn Baker this question. I actually think pork is the perfect human animal protein because pigs are so similar to humans. Their digestive system, we use their heart valves and heart transplants. We use their thyroid, desiccated thyroid and thyroid meds. Do you eat pork? Do you like pork?
I certainly eat it over 2 or 3 times a day. But yeah, I like a lot of pork.
I love your sausage. Your country sausage has just a little bit of spiciness to it. I eat a pound of it at a time. It's fantastic. I love that sausage.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So anyway, the summary of this discussion is that there is a way to raise cattle and other animals for that matter, and not only not hurt the planet, but actually help the planet. And if you are a farmer or you know someone who's a farmer, do you allow people to come to your farm and see how you do things, Will?
Oh, absolutely. We several things on that. We have lodging here on the farm. We have a restaurant here on the farm, a store. We just built an RV park. We have classes where we teach pasture production, regenerative land management. We have we just founded a 501c3 nonprofit called Center for Agricultural Resilience. And it's a very, very high level view of changing the food systems. We welcome people. You know, there's a lot of greenwashing going on out there. And we find that authenticity and transparency are our shield and sword against greenwashing.
Maybe you can teach some politicians that lesson.
Probably not. No, I can't walk on water, Carl.
Will, thanks for being here and thanks for being patient in the green room when we were talking to Dr. Baker. Thanks for making such a great product that it sustains my family with great nutrition. So check it out, shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak. Use the code SUPERHUMAN, save 15% off. Thanks for being here, Will.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy.
Take care. And that's it for today. It's Friday. I don't think I have a show Monday, but we have great shows next week. Don't forget to share the show. Always share the show. You never know who you're going to help. Dr. Baker's message. I mean, people with Lyme disease, autoimmune disorders, all sorts of disorders, literally walking away from their meds and being healthy after being on the carnivore diet for 5, 6, 7 months. You never know who you're going to help. So share the show. We'll see everybody Tuesday with more Superhuman Radio. Thanks for being here today.